Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
What's up, Supernatural superfans? I'm Chrissy Lenz.
And I'm Nate McWhorter.
And we're the host of
Gank That Drink,
a supernatural drinking game podcast.
It's the podcast where we make up drinking game rules for a favorite episode of our favorite show, Supernatural.
We recap the episode for you and let you know how all the rules played out.
Then we let you know the drinking game rules for the next episode, so you can play along.
Plus, members get every episode early and ad-free,
with some extra bonus content chit-chat at the end of each episode as a member exclusive.
So download Gank That Drink, a supernatural drinking game podcast wherever the finest podcasts are available.
And or become a member at truestory.fm/gankthatdrink.
And when you're out there in the world saving people and hunting things,
you know, the family business.
Keep the Gank That Drink motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on,
dudes.
Ever wonder where the devil got his horns?
How about those cloven hooves?
Or that pitchfork?
Wasn't he an angel?
No, he was a snake.
No, he's the great red dragon.
No, he's the beast.
He's the prince of this world.
Prince of darkness.
Well, he's the prince of darkness.
Good morning, star lovelies. One of my names is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I sometimes go by Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, The Devil's Details. What comes to mind when I say Lucifer?
How about Satan?
What about just the devil? How did the big bad of the Western world end up with so many faces? Join us as we dig up, decipher, and deconstruct the devil's many forms throughout history.
Take a guided tour with Dante through the 9 circles of hell.
Or revisit Satan's angsty bad boy years in Paradise Lost.
Learn the ins and outs of a Faustian contract.
Easier than a 1099, but with a hell of a lot more fine print.
Slither on over to The Devil's Details on True Story FM and join us in the diabolic discussion.
Love and hisses. Mwah! Didn't Al Pacino play him in a movie?
Are you sure that wasn't Robert De Niro?
I could have sworn it was Tim Curry.
That was Elizabeth Hurley.
Didn't he go down to Georgia at some point?
Hooked on you, baby, you're golden. Time moves, I never noticed. Just can't get enough. Got me wonderstruck.
Hello and welcome everybody to Make Me a Nerd. I'm Mandy Kaplan and it is my mission to explore all things nerd. All the sci-fi and fantasy and games and books and comic books that I have been missing out on my whole life. I'm finally ready to embrace it all. And embracing it is what I have been doing. Y'all, I have really taken a dive into the deep end. I mean, I just finished for the next episode reading The Watchmen. And I feel like that's when the kids from Pennsylvania Dutch country go on Rumspringa and they try every single drug and they sleep with everybody all at once. And I understand why they go running back to Pennsylvania Dutch country after that. It was intense, but that's for another episode. This episode is all about aliens. Not the first one, which I have many questions about for my incredible guest, because of course I cannot take this journey alone. I am so lucky that when I reached out to an old friend, he agreed to do this. And I'm lucky that he chose aliens, because I'm pretty excited to talk about it. He is, for those of you who are fans of this show or True Story, he's a dear friend of Tom W. Metz, whom I met on set of our web series Premarital 6 about 1,000 years ago. And we've been friends ever since. He always makes me feel good, as I'm sure he will make you feel good. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Darnell Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm so good seeing you. I just haven't seen you in so many years because you moved away from Los Angeles.
That's right. Yeah. I had enough of fires and, just 100-degree days. And so I decided to move to Minneapolis. So it could be nice and cold from fire to ice.
Now, do you spin around and throw your hat up every morning in the streets of Minneapolis?
Oh, every morning. Every
Thank
morning.
you.
Yep. I do that. And then I drive over to Milwaukee, which is just a 3-hour drive, just to go Shamil Shemai Hasef Pepper Incorporated. So it's all, I get to do it all.
You know, in the intro, I should have said you are the Shirley to my Laverne and the Mary to my Rhoda. But I didn't think of it until now. I've never really thought of you that way until right now.
Yep, absolutely.
Those references are the kind of pop culture I have grown up on and held on to for dear life. I was just watching Hot in Cleveland right before I came on here. But you are, as in addition to knowing references like Laverne and Shirley and Mary Tyler Moore, God love ya, did you grow up on that kind of thing? Or were you also into sci-fi fantasy or more sci-fi fantasy?
I was always a nerd. So I'm in that era, that 80s kid era where like everything that wanted to sell me a toy was like set in a fantasy world or on another planet. So it'd be like Transformers or He-Man and all that stuff. So like sci-fi was like naturally within me, like kind of around me, I should say. But then the big thing that made me, I think, put the nerd stamp on me was Star Trek. I really grew up with Star Trek. I thought about it long and hard about like...
Darnell, please keep it PG. Don't say long and hard. No, you could say whatever the fuck you want, Darnell.
Oh, explicit. So here I was, fucking 6 years old, watching Star Trek. No, so the first movie I ever saw in theaters, I had to really think about this on the side. This isn't really for my therapist. Like, I had bigger issues to talk about than what was my first movie. But so Star Trek the Motion Picture, my grandma actually took me to that.
Oh.
1979. I was like 6 years old.
Okay.
And I didn't understand what was going on. I was just like, there's an alien. The ship is cozy. They're in space. Isn't that great? But I think
tight clothes.
Yes. Afros.
Yeah.
Like, it was just sort of like, let's do this. And so then as I was growing up, I was that kid, you know, I'm a 6'3" black dude. So I look like I should be athletic. And I wasn't athletic. So when sometimes people are not athletic, they could just say like, nope, that's not for me. I had to actively avoid like gym class.
You should join the basketball team.
100%.
Yeah.
Point at me first. And they'd be like, we want you. And I'm like, you don't want me. Yep. So what I had to do is like go hide, like go and just, I would play like superheroes from watching Super Friends. I would like watch Star Trek, play with toys. And I think as I grew up, I got to kind of like embrace like, yeah, that's what I like. That's what I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, I became like a theater nerd. And then I also did ROTC to avoid gym class. And I think within that was this sort of make-believe thing too. You know, because ROTC, you're just pretending to be a soldier for fourth period.
Yep.
And then, you know, theater's theater. And so I had always embraced that. And usually, it was through Star Trek. And I think what appealed to me was particularly with Star Trek and with sci-fi in general, was like the sort of positivity, the idea of like the future can be bright, you know, the future, money won't exist and people won't argue and like we'll fly around in carpeted spaceships. And you know, and I think that not only resonated with me, but took me into adulthood as like, I think it made me a more tolerant person. It made me a much more, I think, positive person in general, because I'm constantly like, what would Jean-Luc Picard do? You know, he'd probably listen.
I mean, if you play sports, you are rewarded for your physical athletic prowess, right? And people celebrate that. People put you up on a pedestal and they celebrate athleticism. When you are not athletic, maybe you play an instrument proficiently and you get celebrated for that. But what I'm learning through talking to so many people like yourself and like me, we weren't obviously gifted in the ways that people wanted us to be gifted. So then we turned to these other things like our intellect and our imagination and the things that we did feel good about and positive about. And we were mocked for those things in the 70s and 80s, musical theater and sci-fi. And now those things are being celebrated. Thank you, Lin-Manuel Miranda. Thank you, Big Bang
George
Theory.
Lucas. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Now those things are celebrated as much as you're on the football team. Good for you.
Right. Well, the thing is, I think you're absolutely right, where I think that level of creativity, or it's a much more internal, not celebration, but whereas football, you're running down the field and it's very
everyone
showy.
can see it every Friday night. Yeah.
But I think probably I like theater too, not as much as you like theater, but what I like about theater is musical theater. It's people could just sing their feelings, or you can learn. We will watch a show and maybe learn what it's like to, be an old Jewish fiddler guy who's trying to find wives for his daughters, or so it's not very internal, and no one's gonna be like, "Great job, Mandy, you now thought about humanity in a different way."
Well, my mom might have. She just thinks I hung the moon. But I think that these are the things that we turned to find ourselves and our confidence and our glory, the way other kids had sports.
Yeah. And I think where it gets to this day, where it has now become popular, sort of nerd culture and all that's, I think where you may see a lot of nerds kind of give pushback is this idea of, it was always niche. It was always this is my thing and it's precious to me. And then when you share it with the masses, I think kind of what gets lost is maybe why it was precious. So for example, it's I love sci-fi because it shines the light on humanity. And then you sit with someone who's I love sci-fi too. I love Star Wars. But they don't think about it on that level. So you're not making you have to really vet someone to make a nerd connection, because it's I like it because it's popular. I don't really like it because it makes me think. And so I'm not really interested in having a conversation with you.
And everybody feels proprietary, right? I was listening to Taylor Swift before any of you people, is something I might have been quoted as saying. I knew her when she was 14 and on local radio, and I caught wind of her because it's precious to us.
That's what we said about you. Yeah, we always saw you were playing these country albums, and it's who is this? And you're she'll be big someday. And we didn't believe you.
Look out, world. No, but I do think it's precious to us, and we have these relationships. And then when others glom onto that, it's now back off. Which I am full disclosure here. I am glomming, trying to discover it, but I think I'm trying to come from the inside. There's a reason I didn't pick another mainstream friend and say, hey, let's try and watch these things together and see what we think.
Right.
I want to know what makes it personal and important and meaningful to you.
Yeah. And I think, I think that's part of the reason why I was really interested in participating is that I know you're coming from a place that is help me learn a little bit. I also thought it was the perfect podcast for you, because I remember we were at a party years ago.
Oh boy.
And we were outside, and it was me, you, and Tom, and your son was right at the Disney movie watching age. And I was and I was all precious. I was so if you really want to show your son something special, you should show him Spirited Away. It's one of my favorite animated movies. It's by Hayao Miyazaki. And you heard that Japanese name and you're is that anime? And I was
glazed over.
Yeah, you completely, I couldn't see you check out fast enough behind your eye. You were just that's anime. And I'm and I get super nerdy. No, it's not anime you see, it's elevated. And you were I'm going back inside. And so I kind of knew this about you.
Yeah, Darnell, let's do Spirited Away next time, because I still have never seen it.
Oh, get out of here.
I love that you have that memory of me. It just proves that I really needed a nerdification, my nerdification. So let's get to aliens if we can. Why did you I appreciate your thoughtfulness. You said alien and then you went, nope, wait, make that aliens with an S, the sequel. What made you choose the sequel over the original?
So this is probably gonna like this. It's not super controversial, but with this franchise, a lot of people think that Alien, Ridley Scott's 1979 horror film, is like the best of the franchise and the superior film. I think Aliens it's so much better on so many levels. In fact, like I say it's probably my favorite movie of all time. And it's because I saw this movie when I was 12 years old and I saw it in the theater. And as you can see, it gave me nightmares for a while. It was really this descent into horror. But I think that the thing that really resonates is it's so rich in themes in a way that the first film isn't. And the first film is really about the writer, Dan O'Bannon, was really obsessed with H.P. Lovecraft and this idea of this unknown being the scariest thing that humans have ever faced. And so it's a really great movie. It is a masterpiece, but it is very singular in theme. It's kind of a film that shouldn't have gotten a sequel. They shouldn't have tried to make it. And then James Cameron comes along and he takes that theme and expands on it in such a unique, fascinating way. So I wanted you to watch that as your entry point to the franchise, because it also speaks to the rest of the franchise. Because ever since, it's like an accidental movie blockbuster franchise, and it has never been as good as the 1986 sequel. And so for the last 40 years, we've been trying to make it we've been trying to recapture that spirit.
I mean, I've heard of like Alien versus Predator and stuff like that. Is that part of this or no?
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. I'll get into a little bit of what all that is, but.
Well, here's my initial thought and question as I was watching this movie.
Yeah.
It does not feel like a sci-fi / fantasy film at all. It feels like a very familiar setup. Any military movie, any private school movie. I mean, it really isn't about sci-fi and outer space. I wrote, it feels like an action movie. And then I started really thinking about what the distinction is. And for me, I think the distinction is that the creatures, the aliens, which would make it sci-fi, they have no personalities or voices. They are just this evil force. Whereas in Star Wars or Star Trek, Klingons and, Jabba the Hutt and they all speak. And therefore, that to me, am I the first one to say this? Should I trademark this? That to me is like, that defines sci-fi fantasy. This felt like a really exciting action movie taking place in outer space.
Right.
But it didn't feel sci-fi.
That's fascinating because my definition of sci-fi and yours, I think, differs. So what I consider sci-fi, or what I consider sci-fi does for us, is it takes something fantastical and it gives us a way to relate to it, So even though there's no mustache twirly villain, or there's no lasers or anything like that, or,
Well, Paul Buckman is pretty evil.
Yes. Oh, Paul Reiser's Burke. Yes.
Paul Buckman was in my wedding vows. Let's just put it. I love him that much. I love Paul Reiser and Mad About You, and so. But I knew he was a bad guy. I knew that going in.
And I forgot his name was Paul Buckman on Mad About You. That's right. So wait, so you knew that going in that this is the villain of the piece. Yeah.
But I watched it with Jer, and he did not know, and he gasped when he turned. Jer was like, "What? What?" So that was cool because I was like, I knew that would happen, but he didn't.
And he's so charming, and it's Paul Reiser, and you
Paul
just like,
Reiser.
And he's just like, "Come with us, you'll need this. So I'm trying to help you out." Yeah. So I think what the aliens have always represented throughout the whole franchise, and maybe this is what I think differs a little bit from. This is why I think I like it a little bit differently than most people when I have conversations about this franchise. I think a lot of people see this is like a monster. Just like you said, this is a monster. It's relentless. It has no personality. It has no motive. And I think what I really like about that is it's really talking about the horrors of life. The horrors of the unknown from that Lovecraftian piece that kind of made the first movie is all about what's out there in space, that sort of thing. But I think what's cool about these aliens is it's usually shining a light on the hubris of humanity, right? There's always someone who's like, I know how to defeat this. Yeah. There's this company, Weyland-Yutani, this one of the most iconic fake companies in movie history. They're always like, we can make this a great weapon and make a killing off of it.
Right.
And it is disinterested in anything that humanity wants and has to offer. It's just like, I just need something to hatch a baby in, and that's all I need from you. And it's relentless, and it doesn't care.
Which is exactly also what Jeremy said in our wedding vows. That's crazy.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Now, you keep saying Lovecraft, and I thought that was a B-52 song. I'm not familiar with H.P. Lovecraft, but
yeah,
I mean, I've heard of it. But
so H.P. Lovecraft is, and I'm not too familiar with him. Like, I've never read his works or anything like that. He's an old sci-fi horror author who is obsessed with things, unknown creatures coming from voids that we didn't know. So his books were always about opening a gate to hell, and then a tentacled monster would come out.
Okay.
Or specifically, Alien is kind of based on a book about a team goes to Antarctica, and then they go inside of a place and find monsters that they can't deal with. And so that's a little bit what we see here with the first movie in particular. They go to this planet and they find this one of these monsters, hatches an egg, gets on someone's face. I want to be high level because I think ultimately it'd be good for the two of you to go back and watch that at some point, because it is a fantastic work of art.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed this tremendously, so I'm not averse to that.
And so the idea of having this character, Sigourney Weaver's character, Ellen Ripley, survive this unknown, relentless experience with one of them, and they're like, you gotta go back. To me, that was, even I remember 12-year-old me just being like, and I hadn't seen the first movie when I'd watch it. That was actually one of the few horror movies where my mom, can I get a quick sideways story?
Yeah.
So I was the youngest kid, early 80s, and this kid across the street, his dad, right when VHSs were coming out, his dad got one of those VCRs that's like a side-by-side, so he could rent a movie, record it, and then like take the movie back. So he had all these movies. So my brother was going like, where are you going? I'm going to Mark's house. Can I go? No, you can't go. And I'm like, Mom, I want to go. They're going to go watch Alien. And my mom was like, nope, it's too scary for you. So I snuck out the house and snuck across the street, watched one scene, and got so scared I ran back home.
Good for you.
And so then when the sequel came out, I was like, I don't know. And so to sit I went in blind and was just like, immediately I'm connected with Ripley, because to be told to return to your nightmare,
right, which is what you were doing to see the sequel. Yeah,
absolutely. And so to go through that experience that was a really incredible motivation, and for her to do it for these like selfless reasons, not revenge or not. It was really just like, these people might need my help. These colonists have families. I just really love that. And that speaks to the sort of positivity that I love out of sci-fi.
Yeah. And I mean, I've known about this movie. I've known about Ripley and what a badass she is. And we've seen the images. But I was fascinated by the world they created on Earth before she went back. I found the level of detail so exciting. And it was just little things. I always say when I go to a museum, I'm not really interested in the art and the vases. I'm much more interested in the practical things people used in their day-to-day life. And that's something this movie did really well. Like the weird glass short coffee cups that they all drank out of, the weird glass card that Paul Reiser handed her as a business card, and then she used it into the video phone. It automatically
it sticks in the phone. Yeah.
In 1986, that had to be like, whoa. mind
Yeah,
blown.
absolutely.
The
Yeah.
little pod she was living in, where everything looked normal-ish but white and futuristic. I
Yep,
just thought that
exactly.
was fascinating, and I wanted to even dive further before she took off. I wanted to see what kind of cars they drove and what kind of music they listened to. I was interested in their day-to-day in this futuristic world.
Absolutely. And
Really
that's-
well done.
And that is a credit to James Cameron. And I mean, the other piece of this is I'm a huge James Cameron nerd. And this is the movie, he did Terminator and then wrote this movie while waiting to film Terminator. And so this came out a couple years after Terminator. But this is the film that sort of put him on the map of like, just do whatever you want. And one of the things he's really good at is world building and creating that level of detail. And you see it in these small ways. The first shot of the film, every single time I watch it, it's that long, it's this quiet shot in her sleep pod. She's been in that pod at the end of the first movie, she escapes, goes to sleep with the cat. And unknowingly, 57 years go by, and you get this robot laser thing burning a hole through this hatch. And it's like a good 30 seconds of screen time that it eats up, but it's just showing like this is a real lived in world that also has like robot lasers. You're in the future, but you're in a real lived in future.
Well, what I'm learning about sci-fi and fantasy is the world building. And the ones that I'm enjoying are the ones that get so detailed about that world. And that's whenever I'm talking to people like you, it's like the world. It's not just the characters or the plot or the lore. It's that level of detail that's
right.
Really it makes it so you can picture yourself there and it takes you away. It's a complete journey.
What did you think of because they made a really good choice both with the first film and with this one and with this franchise in general of being like, this is the future. We travel in space. We have sleep pods, but we're also people. Like it's also contemporary.
We smoke
right?
and we drink coffee and
Yeah, and the characters are named Vasquez and Hudson. It's not like Lieutenant this is Zignorf.
Right.
Does that help? Does that help you access the materials and the themes as a non-nerd?
I was in from the start. I really thought did a good job of humanizing her. And I think a lot of it is Paul Reiser being so charismatic and goofy, and that's who he is. Wanted to fix his collar.
He's so helpful.
Wanted to fix his collar. That's the 80s, not the future. But yeah.
That's that future touch. So sci-fi does that a lot where it's just like, they wear suits, but the collars are up because it's 2246,
Right. Now, why did she cut her hair? Was she trying to, she ended up looking like Paul Reiser or I wrote Napoleon Dynamite. Why did she cut her hair?
My speculation is just simply she was starting over, because a few weeks had gone by while she had been on that space station.
Yeah,
so they
like the
found
train
her.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was like that look of her long curls and stuff. That's exactly how she looked in the first movie. And I think it's just the evolution of time. She's just sort of like, I need to cut my hair. I need to find work. I'm just kind of starting over. And then she's experiencing a lot of PTSD. Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen that. I wonder if is it a cut scene or was it in the script and never got filmed? A moment of her deciding, I'm going to streamline. I'm going to get ready for this journey. And this is part of that.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's a FX 8-episode prequel series coming up called Ripley's Haircut. And it centers on Sarah Paulson plays Ripley's beauty stylist.
It's a Ryan Murphy production, I see.
It's a Ryan Murphy production. Absolutely.
Oh, that's funny.
But so what, speaking of cuts, so there is a special edition that came out in like 1990 that adds a few scenes that I think actually, so the producer, Gail Ann Hurd, who at the time was James Cameron's wife, which, can you imagine trying to make a movie with your spouse? I can't imagine. But so, can't imagine.
I can't make dinner with my spouse without getting annoyed. No. He listens. I'm just kidding.
Absolutely.
The comedy
My wife,
podcast, Chair.
I love you, Lauren. I know, but same. Get out of the kitchen right now, please. I gotta cook. And so anyway, so she decided to cut an entire reel out of the film that shows us the colonists, and then she decided to also cut a piece of the beginning that reveals that Ripley had a daughter who was young in the first film. And was that in your version of the movie?
No, that was was Ripley a mom? She has such affection for Newt, and it feels like she's lost a daughter at some point. Questions for Dash is what I wrote.
So absolutely. So part of the lore, because it was cut out of the final theatrical version of the film, was she had a daughter, 57 years went by, and she was like, I don't know how to get in touch with her. I don't know where she is. She's could be dead because she's an old woman at the time. Like, I don't know. And so it just touched on that a little bit. And they felt that added, although it added backstory, it didn't really add much to the maternal, because later we see how maternal she is. And the maternal instincts and the whole theme of motherhood resonates so much in the film.
Well, yeah, with the alien too.
With the alien queen, and it becomes this mom versus mom, and they're both trying to protect their babies. And I mean, that's...
Oh, I'm so glad I picked up on that. I did write that. It's essentially two moms battling it out for the survival of their young. I wrote that somewhere because I'm smart like
that. Absolutely. And so that was something as well that was added. The original film wrote all the characters, the original screenwriter of the first movie wrote all the characters as men. And Ridley Scott, at the time when he was casting the film, was just like, let's just take Ripley and this other character and we're going to cast women. And so Sigourney Weaver, I think if it wasn't her first picture, she was like an unknown star. Like Tom Skerritt was the star of the first film. But the way the script works, Sigourney Weaver's character survives. And so it just worked as magic to have like this female character survive on wits and intelligence and just...
And badassery.
And badassery. But while also being scared shitless the entire time.
Yeah.
And so James Cameron wanted to celebrate that a little bit and be more about like, this is an incredible female character. We've never seen anything like this. I want to lean into what that means. And so it's still 80s macho man. It's through that lens. Like the movie barely passes the Bechdel test, but
I'm not sure it does, but okay.
I think it does by Ripley yelling at the executive at the beginning. I think it passes I think that's it. But none of the other women talk to each other. So anyway, but that's sort of, he wanted to keep these themes alive and expand on that a little bit. And he wanted to, with there being multiple aliens, he wanted to show this sort of, he's very inspired by insects. And so that's why
clearly
it's very insect-like and but
which
gave that queen some intelligence and a survival instinct of her own, which I really love about the third act of this film.
So that is the third act, but before the third act, in the second act, when we're starting to get a sense of how bad things are going to get, and the aliens are appearing, I loved that they appeared, but we couldn't fully see one. They looked like little octopi or little spiders, but you couldn't quite tell what it was. Was it slimy? Was it skeletal? And when she's under the bed with Newt and one of them scurries by, that's terrifying. That's so well done. Such great choices.
Locked in a room, just that shot of the glass that the container that it was in is knocked over, and you're just like, oh no, there's a monster in the room. Oh, and it's very like little kid, like, oh my God, I'm under the bed and there's a monster in the room.
Right. And I neglected to say in the beginning, when I was talking about how it's really not a sci-fi movie to me, it's an action movie or an adventure movie, but it is a horror movie. And and I love horror. I love getting the creeps like that. And not seeing the monster was ultimately way more scary than seeing the monster. Seeing the eggs before they hatch is scarier than when they do. And they, it comes out and it's like, well, okay, now I've seen it. So it's the fear of the unknown, back to Lovecraft, I guess.
Absolutely. And what did you think about, the you don't see the monsters. Things don't happen until an hour into the movie. The entire first hour is just this ratcheting of tension. It's just this, there's these Marines, and you're like, I feel safe with these Marines. I feel safe with Paul Reiser. They don't seem bothered by what they have to do. Maybe Ripley is overreacting. I think she'll be all right this time. And they're all, and then they go deeper and deeper into this Lovecraft country. They get into their drop ship and they're all, we're an express elevator to hell going down. And you're just like, and an hour into the movie, they go in, it's scary, but there's nothing there. The colonists are gone.
Where did the colonists go? I was so confused by that.
So the aliens, they were in the area underneath the reactor, which is where things turned ugly. So the colonists were all captured and entombed. So do you remember the woman that was encased in the wall?
Yeah.
And she was like,
opened her
kill me?
eyes. Yeah.
All the other colonists were taken and put into that state so that
and
they
how
could
did Newt survive? Sorry, I just have a lot of questions.
No, absolutely. Ask away. So she saw that happen, and she just survived by hiding and running away and knowing how to evade these aliens. And that's a big component of that character. But then also the other characters, there's a line where Hudson, who's Bill Paxton's character, is, which I love because he's just the first hour of the film, he's the cockiest guy. He's just, and then when all hell breaks loose, he's just the biggest coward. He's like, let's get out of here. Let's bug out and call it even. And he loses it. And she sort of gets him together by saying, like, this little girl has survived here a lot longer than we have. Like, be as brave as this little girl. And
right.
I think that is such a strong choice to have this little kid survive all these events and to basically live a nightmare, to have a child live an actual nightmare. But the other colonists, her parents, her brother, there's a moment where they all have these transponder things implanted in their bodies. And the Marines were able to look and see, all the colonists are by the reactor. And then they all decide to get in their big
Cybertruck?
Thing.
Cybertruck?
Yeah, Cybertruck. Their Cybertruck.
Can we talk about it?
Absolutely.
I had to look it up.
Cybertruck.
But I had to look it up. Like, was Elon Musk inspired by this movie when he designed the Cybertruck? And it said no, it was other inspirations. But basically, James Cameron designed a Cybertruck. Let's just...
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. If you look, so one of the fun things, again, this is my favorite movie of all time. I've gone down all the rabbit holes. Like, one of the really fun things is the budget on this was only something like $10 or $12 million. It was
really?
Super cheap. Absolutely.
Wow.
And so that truck is like an airplane towing truck that they just painted to make it look like a marine. And it totally looks like a futuristic truck thing. Right. They couldn't even climb in it. Like, they just had to fake people climbing out of it. So it's the power loaders, the big robot forklifts. Those are all styrofoam, essentially, like a muscular guy and other. And so, but he's able to create this like really like realistic looking. This is what future Marines look like. And I think a lot of movies, if you look at other sci-fi movies, Starship Troopers, TV shows, even like Avatar, the way they design military people, even the real U.S. military, I think, have adopted a certain aesthetic from this movie.
Oh, interesting.
I think the body armor and like the night vision goggles and all that. If you kind of look at how a soldier looks nowadays, and I don't think it's intentional, but I think it's sort of maybe subconscious. So I bet Elon Musk was, if he wasn't inspired by this, he was inspired by something that was probably inspired by this,
Yeah, because I'm smart and I know these things. So let's just go with
Let's just go with that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know this is your favorite movie, and I am not going to disparage anything except...
Nope, disparage away. Yeah.
Can we talk about Little Eponine? Newt, not an actress. I said, my note was, she talks like ABBA sings. Like she is being phonetically told how to pronounce things. And then I looked her up, and this was her only credit.
Yes.
But I imagined the callbacks when they said, "Can you scream?" And she let one of those screams go, and they said, "You got the part. Sorry, Drew Barrymore, it's you." And
absolutely,
she was terrible. She was a terrible little actress, and I'm willing to say it. I think it's okay to bash children.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's okay too. I think if sorry, kid actors' parents, if you put your kid on the screen, we get to judge them.
Yes, we do.
So I am a little precious with all this. You can disparage her as much as you want. I chalk up her flat affectations to PTSD, to just sort of like, and I love that element. I do agree when things start to get a little bigger, she gets a little she can't really pull off the bigger emotions or anything like that. But you know what? That's what Sigourney Weaver's for. Like, you know, it's just like,
she got paid the big bucks.
Yeah, and I mean, Sigourney Weaver got an Oscar nomination for this film.
Did she really?
This was her first Oscar nomination.
Oh, wow.
For a sci-fi action blockbuster role. So and she's phenomenal.
Okay, so while we're on Newt, I do have questions about this third act. I have a lot of them. Okay.
Yep.
So, how does Ripley know that Newt is alive? And what, right? No, she doesn't go back for Paxton or anybody else. Why does she know Newt's alive?
So I'll first get into why she goes back, and then I'll talk about the mechanics of it. It's a fun callback to the third act of the first film. So the importance of the cat's name is Jones, by the way, Jonesy. And so in the first film, Ripley was ready to get away. She's like, I'm going to kill this alien. I'm going to blow up the ship. I'm going to get away in this pod. I'm ready. And she sees the cats meowing on the bridge of the ship. And she's like, shit, I have to go back and literally save the cat. And she does, and it's a really fun final third act. So this film apes that a little bit by having Newt captured by an alien. She is, earlier in the film, Corporal Hicks, who's Michael Bihn's character, gives Ripley a little locator watch thing.
Right, I remember. James Cameron also invented the Apple Watch. Go on.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And as well as the motion detector, the flamethrower, the grenade on your gun. So she gave that to Newt in the underneath the bed. Yep. And so she knew how to find her. She took a wild guess because when Bishop, the android, flew the ship back and he's like, we've got 20 minutes, plenty of time to get out of here. She's like, I gotta just go. So she went on faith. And
really?
She went as an act of selflessness because, again, the theme is about a mother who will put her child above herself. And she is like, I would rather die on this rock than fly away without knowing if Newt survived or not.
I won't even miss a moment of Housewives if it's a reunion for if Casey needs help with his homework. He could be in a burning building and I would be saying, not now. Oh, Mom's watching Housewives.
Absolutely. Yep. I would have been like with Noah. I would have been like, I told you to stay by me, and you didn't listen. You fell through the thing, and an alien got you.
Yep.
Now that's on you.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how they learn, Darnell. That's how they learn.
That's how you learn. You're gonna have to learn how to survive having a thing put an egg in you. Yep.
Yes. So she goes back on faith.
She goes back on faith and just takes a wild guess that like, it's too soon for a spider to come and put, because so the life cycle of the aliens, the reason why they want to capture humans, right? It's like an insect. It's egg, larva, pupa, and adult kind of thing, right? So you have the egg hatches the spider things, which are called face huggers. Oh. The face huggers, of course, hug a face. They go on people's face and implant the actual alien itself.
Okay.
That's the sort of pupa stage where that alien grows inside a person, bursts out their chest, and then grows into a full adult monster. And so that's the process. And Ripley thought, like, it's only been a few minutes. I need to go back and get her. I don't think she's been, like, face hugged yet.
Okay.
And sure enough, when Ripley sees her, the egg spits out and it's ready. The little spider's ready to come out and come at Newt, but Ripley shoots it all and kills it all and kills all the
slime.
eggs. Yep. And she burns those eggs, and it's so cathartic. You're like, yeah, burn those eggs, burn them. But I love that act of selflessness of going back and then having to do it again a few minutes later when she's back on the ship because the Queen hitched a ride.
Yes, apparently. That is the part that I like. That's that extra. You think you're in the denouement. You think it's all over.
Yep.
I was like, oh, I don't need to see another battle with the alien. I was burnt out at that point. I thought it was the perfect story.
Right.
So I did roll my eyes when the stowaway made herself known.
Yeah.
But that's just my taste.
No, I don't disagree with that. I love that moment. It is a little bit of like, that was a great movie. Get ready for bed. Like, let's put our PJs on. We're going to hypersleep. And then, yes, you have to deal with this extra thing. That, again, is a bit of a callback to the first film.
Okay.
But also, I think it leads to such an iconic moment for me. Just the fight between the Queen.
Get away from her, you bitch.
Absolutely.
The loader.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I get it. And
an all-time classic movie line. That's like one of the biggest. Get away from her, you bitch.
Yeah.
Is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and I get that, you know.
And the need to shoot the alien out of the airlock was also a callback from the first film. So it was these callbacks. I agree with it. It's sort of like one ending too many. But what a just a beautiful ending.
Earlier in the movie, I don't think it happens at the end, but I could be wrong. But when the big aliens open their mouth and another alien pops out, I wrote, oh, it's like a sliming Russian nesting doll.
Yep.
Absolutely. Like, I really liked that visual, and it's so terrifying because generally in movies, the monster opens its mouth.
Yep.
And this time it opened its mouth.
And then
another monster came out. Yeah.
Yeah. There's another like monster tongue. Yeah. Yeah. That was so this I don't remember his nationality, but this artist named H.R. Giger is known for making these really monstrous yet sexual type of drawings, and he's also really inspired by Lovecraft. And so when they went to go design the alien in the first film, they reached out to him and said, like, look, this is what I'm thinking. What's the worst thing you can imagine? And they were then inspired by a lot of like old paintings of really surreal kind of hellscapes. And something that stuck out was another artist. Ooh, I forget his name, but another artist would render these like monsters with snake-like no eyes and just like a snake-like snout with a mouth on it. And so that's what they came up with. Like, let's just give it a killer tongue.
Well, there's one that there's one that flirts with Riser, and it's like a penis coming out of a vagina, and it was so sexual, and I was like, oh, this is wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you hit on it correctly with the creatures. They are meant to evoke this feeling of like sexuality, and because part of the human fear is the fear of the body and the destruction of the body to make another body. And so like they're really getting into all the stuff about birth and death, getting to the alien's motivation. I just need to live and procreate. And unfortunately, the way to do that is to kill you, and is to implant my baby in you, and it's going to come out your chest. Sorry, is what they don't say. And so to give that kind of fear, that human fear, is to bring in this weird, remember, it was the 70s, so they were just like, sex is cool, but it's also scary, man. Let's code this a little bit and make it feel like it's not just a monster eating you. You're just, you're sort of assaulted. You're sort of violated, this in order, but not through malice, just through, this is what they do.
Right.
And
survival.
So I think yeah, you picked up on, it was definitely very phallic, a phallic death that Paul Reiser threw.
Yes. And the last thing I said in my extensive, wildly intellectual notes but the last thing I said was, this movie just proves my point that kids ruin everything.
Absolutely.
I think that's what Cameron was trying to say.
I think that's the theme. That's the theme of it. They make it's just don't have kids. I think that's the whole. Interestingly enough, so the reason why I wanted to, when I talk about the franchise itself, is what they've tried to chase. The interesting thing about this franchise is up until this newest one that's out in theaters now, Alien Romulus, the subsequent movies never tried to repeat what the previous film did. They got all new filmmakers with an all new take.
Oh.
But they thematically, so Alien 3 is a famous Hollywood disaster, and it was David Fincher's first film ever.
Oh.
And it was studio meddling. They put out a release date before they had a script that was finished. The Vincent Ward, who made like What Dreams May Come, he dropped out like right at the 11th hour. They're like, let's get this music video guy who's hungry. This guy David Fincher. He gets in. He almost came from out of the experience saying, I'm done directing. I will never make another movie again. And then he tried again with the movie with Seven, and the rest is history. But so that film, they tried to thematically say like, okay, well, what if Ripley now had to be the mother of this monster? And then the fourth movie, what if Ripley had a kid that was half monster? And it just doesn't work on those levels.
Is she in those? Sigourney Weaver? Did she stick with it?
Yeah. Sigourney stuck with the third and the fourth one. And then she hasn't said she'll never come back, but they just haven't found the right script that appeals to her to come back. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to ask about this new one because I didn't even know this was part of the franchise. I saw it at the movie theater, like Alien Romulus, and it didn't even occur to me. Yeah.
So in 2012, Ridley Scott, who this Alien was the movie that kind of made him famous. It was his second film. It was a massive blockbuster hit. Iconic. It is worth seeing. I do recommend it, but again, I wanted to really more talk about the themes of this other one. But so anyway, so he decided like, let's revisit the alien world, and he came out with a film called Prometheus, and I kind of love this movie, but most nerds absolutely hate it because and what he was trying to do is like, hey, let's just talk about the origins of life. Let's not, the aliens are ancillary to everything, but what if humans are trying to unlock the beginnings of life on Earth in where it all came from? And the movie has an all-star cast: Idris Elba, Charlize Theron, like Noomi Rapace. It's gorgeous. It is the dumbest movie. Like it is just very not. So he came out with that. He came out with a sequel, and then at a certain point they were like, you know what? Let's just reset it. And so this new movie is just almost like a copy of a copy. They just said, let's take the look of the first Alien, the action feel of the second one, and just kind of go with it. And it's been a hit. Like, so that's it's Ridley Scott?
Is it Ridley Scott?
It's not Ridley Scott. Oh. It's a director named Fede Alvarez who did the remake of Evil Dead. He did the other Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie that no one's seen, the one with Claire Foy. He's also kind of a new small director, and that Evil Dead remake was really good, and I was really excited. And it's kind of what the franchise does. Let's get a new, fresh director and see what they could do. Unfortunately, they decided to go the route of like, let's just kind of copy what's been done before.
You're talking about it and it's leaving a bad taste in my mouth. Let's use a little of this and a little of this and spit it back out like it's a new thing. Screw you, exactly. Hollywood. Come up with a new take. I mean, what you're saying about the other ones with Ripley having a baby that's half alien, at least that's a different story. You're saying it didn't work, but at least
and that's kind of that's why I really like this franchise, because it was so good at experimenting. So even when the experiment fails, there are things to really like, okay, I'm going to watch this for the 5th time. So for David Fincher's Alien 3 made me so angry when I saw it in the theater because it's so bad and it's just so confusing. But you know what? Years later, 1 a.m., I can't sleep. I'm a little depressed. I'm drinking bourbon. I put that thing on and I'm like, oh, I understand it now. This is the mood. This is the mood he was going. He was going for a 1 a.m. sad mood. And so
next time I'm depressed, maybe I'll put on The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the 8th Dimension, and I'll see if I can wrap my brain around that one. It's not going to happen. Sorry, Pete.
I haven't seen that since the theater because I'm afraid I'm not going to like it. Like, I want to hang on to a memory that, like, oh, I think it was good. I don't think it. Yeah,
Pete's going to cut this part because I'm a terrible person. But that's the only thing I've tried that I really was like, whoa, I can't do this. But
I'm not going to cut this part. No, you'll get to live out this embarrassment later, someday.
So I will say I'm being precious with the franchise. This movie, a lot of the Alien fans love this new one, Alien Romulus, because it's just giving you as a fan what you want. I personally don't like fan service, so I don't like this, like, hey, look at this callback to this thing, or there's even a character in this new movie who says to an alien, "Get away from her, you bitch."
Oh.
And but
that's what they want, right? The people all cheer when they hear it in the theater.
That's what the fans want. Yep. And so it's happening to all our franchises. So, but I love this. I thought Aliens, I was like, oh, I only love this movie because I saw it in the theater when I was 12 and had an experience. But I'm telling you, I put it on maybe the last time I watched this, like maybe 2 weeks ago because of Alien Romulus. And I put it on and I'm like, yep, this is
still works.
Still my favorite movie of all time.
I'm so glad you shared it with me.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And
I truly did.
I don't expect you to like Carrie Hinn's performance. You like what you like and you hate what you hate. That's all. But I love it all.
I'm so glad. All right, I'm going to put you to the test here and ask you, after I do all my business, I want to know what mainstream thing you're really into these days. So give that a think. Okay. And I'm going to tell everyone that Make Me a Nerd is a production of True Story FM, engineering by the wonderful Pete Wright. And my theme song is by Jane and the Boy. Please hit me up on social media at Instagram, which is at Mandy_Kaplan_Clavens, both with Ks. And I need reviews. So go, if you're listening on Apple, hit that 5-star, and underneath that, you'll see write a review. That helps me find new audience and grow this thing, which is the ultimate goal, to take over the world. If you are feeling moved to become a part of the community, go to makemeanerd.com and hit that join button. $5 a month will get you extra content and more access to me, and we'll come up with some fun things for the holidays. And I really would love you to join me on this journey. Darnell.
Yeah.
What mainstream thing, almost guilty pleasure, like, would you be embarrassed to admit, yep, I'm actually really into this too? Admit it now in front of everyone.
I'm not gonna lie, like, Love is Blind.
Oh,
the Love is Blind Ultimatum universe is absolutely a must watch in our house. Like, we mainline the whole thing, and I love it. I love it.
People love it.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Have you never seen it? So it's two separate shows, and they're kind of produced by the same people. Netflix. Love is Blind. Everyone's good looking, so that defeats the entire conceit of the series. But
no losers there.
Right, but the conceit is, of course, I'm gonna fall in love. I'm gonna talk to someone in a closed room and never see them until the moment I propose marriage, and then
it goes
they
all the way to
marriage.
Marriage.
So they
dumb.
do so once they propose. Oh, absolutely, it's dumb. And so once they propose, then they get to see each other. And then after, say, 6 couples are paired up, the show usually needs 4 to 6 couples to do it. Then they all go to Cancun together. And then they get to see all the other people that they didn't choose and flirt with. And then it's like, I'm engaged with this person, but she's so freaking hot. I can't deal with it. and then sparks fly. Yeah, and then
So the reason you like sci-fi is because what it says about humanity, and this sounds like the polar opposite. This is like the worst side of humanity to me.
But in a way, I think what I really like about it is I'm a deep romantic. And I love romance. I love a rom-com. I love a rom-dram. But I think what I really, really love about it is even though these people are vapid and they just want to be on TV and they're all broken from spending all of their 20s being good looking and making bad choices on partners, what I love about it is they are also hopeful that this is going to work for them. And then you get to the reunion and 20% of the couples stay together, and that's usually worth it. When it's like, it's been a year, you guys still married, and one couple's like, yep, we're still together, and you're just like, oh, that last 9 episodes of nonsense was worth watching.
That's what I wanted the Golden Bachelor to be, and it turned out not to be. But I had that hope in the beginning.
You know what the problem is? The problem with the Golden Bachelor, because same thing. I was like, oh, the problem with the Bachelor is I don't care about 20-somethings. And then 50-somethings, let's go. 50, 60-somethings. But the Bachelor is they're all vying for the attention of one boring person. And so watching these women, especially older women, go like, oh my God, I hope Bill gives me a rose. And you're just like, him? He sucks. He's boring.
Yeah.
Like, why would you?
I liked him until now we know he's not a great guy, I think. But I liked him.
Yeah. But even then, would you fight with 6 other women for his affection?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
He's not like Adam Driver. He's not like Gosling,
Oh, okay. That's a whole separate episode. Adam Driver? Where did that? No. All right. Darnell.
Yes.
Thank you for doing this. And we are done here. We have used our allotted time, but I want to tell everybody to tune in next week. I am doing The Watchmen, and I'm proud of myself that I did it, and I'm doing it with an actual comic book writer, creator. His name is Adam Rose. Bizarrely, he's my cousin somehow. We're not really clear how. So everybody tune into that. Thank you, Darnell Smith. And thank you all for joining me on Make Me a Nerd. Until next time.
Just